Diane Simmons spent 8 full seasons sitting next to Tom Tucker reading the news, and almost nobody watching knew she was a killer. Then Family Guy handed her a feature-length murder mystery, let her take out 5 people in one night, and ended the episode with a sniper bullet in her back and a cliff under her feet. She never came back, and she is only the beginning. Family Guy has a reputation as the show where nobody ever pays for anything, the show where Peter shoots whoever he wants, Lois lies about whoever she wants, and the reset button hits every Sunday night at 8. That reputation is lazy, and across 25 seasons, the writers have been quietly proving it wrong. 10 characters on this show have earned their endings in ways that stuck, and tonight we're going through every single one of them. Welcome to Red Umbrella. Let us begin. Diane Simmons, the co-anchor who became a serial killer. For 8 full seasons, Diane Simmons was background furniture. She sat next to Tom Tucker at the Channel 5 news desk, read the headlines, traded small talk, and faded back into the wallpaper of Quahog the second the scene cut. If you sat someone down and asked them to name 10 Family Guy characters off the top of their head, Diane probably wouldn't crack the list. She was there, she was steady, she was the calm blonde woman in the red jacket who said good evening and handed things over to Ollie Williams for the weather. That was the entire job, which is exactly why what the show did to her in 2010 worked so well. The show took the most overlooked character on its roster, gave her a feature-length murder mystery all to herself, and revealed that the quiet woman next to Tom Tucker had been sitting on enough rage to kill 5 people in a single night. Then, the show shot her off a cliff and left her there. She never came back. The show told Seth MacFarlane fans directly on Twitter that she was gone for good, and more than 15 years later, that promise has held. The episode is called And Then There Were Fewer, Season 9, Episode 1. It aired in September 2010, and it was the first episode of Family Guy to air in widescreen and high definition, which tells you the show knew this one was a big deal before a single person pressed play. The setup borrows from an Agatha Christie novel and an old Clue movie. Almost the entire town gets invited to a fancy dinner at a remote mansion. The host turns out to be James Woods, playing a wild, evil version of himself. He tells the guests he wants to make amends for the terrible things he has done to all of them. A storm knocks out the bridge. A gun rigged to a chair goes off and kills a woman named Stephanie by accident. James Woods gets stabbed in the back during a blackout. Muriel Goldman is stabbed next. Derek Wilcox gets his skull caved in with a Golden Globe Award. Priscilla has her throat slit. The body count keeps climbing, and every guest in the mansion becomes a suspect. The reveal is that the quiet news co-anchor did all of it. Diane walks Lois out to the edge of a tall cliff at the end of the episode. She is calm when she explains why. Her life had unraveled in a way nobody had been paying attention to. She had secretly been dating James Woods, and he had dumped her. Tom Tucker had arranged for the network to replace her as co-anchor with a younger woman because she had turned 40. In one swing of bad luck, the job she had quietly held for nearly a decade and the secret romance she had been leaning on were both yanked out from under her, so she planned a dinner party. She paid the intern Priscilla to seduce James Woods and turn him into a born-again Christian so he would invite everyone to his mansion. She rigged the chair, she waited for the power to go out. She did it all to kill James and frame Tom for it and take down the 2 men who had thrown her away. Stephanie, the accidental victim in the chair, was not part of the plan. Diane meant for James to sit there. James moved at the last second. Stephanie sat in his place to test him, and the gun went off into her head instead. That unplanned death forced Diane to keep killing. Every new guest who got too close to figuring it out had to be silenced. Muriel caught her planting the murder weapon in Tom Tucker's bag. Priscilla knew too much. Derek was just in the wrong hallway with the wrong cell phone signal. Each body was a cover-up for the body before it. The whole thing snowballed from a single miss. Lois is the only one who puts it together. She pieces it together from a small slip. Diane casually mentions details about her upcoming solo news debut that she could not possibly know about yet, since the news of her promotion was days away from being public. Lois catches it. Diane sees that Lois caught it. So Diane walks Lois out to the cliffs with a gun and prepares to take the last witness off the board. And then a bullet hits Diane in the back from a second-story window of the mansion, and she falls off the cliff into the ocean. The shooter is Stewie, perched in an upstairs window with a sniper rifle and a silencer, watching the whole thing through a scope. He saved Lois, but not for the reason Lois thinks. The line the show gives him is that nobody gets to kill Lois but him. He is protecting his own future kill. It is dark in a way that the show does not usually let itself be, and the fact that nobody on screen ever finds out Stewie did it makes it darker. But the part worth sitting with is Diane herself, because this is the clearest biggest and cleanest earning of karma the show has ever produced, and almost nobody talks about it in those terms. Think about what she actually did. She murdered Stephanie, a woman she had never met, by accident. She murdered James Woods, her ex, on purpose. She murdered Muriel, a sweet older woman whose worst crime was being nosy, because Muriel spotted her hiding evidence. She murdered Priscilla, the intern she had paid to help her, the moment Priscilla became a threat. She murdered Derek, a man whose only role in the whole story was being the husband of Brian's ex-girlfriend, because he got close to a working phone. And she was one breath away from murdering Lois in cold blood, just to finish covering her tracks. 5 people dead, a 6th lined up in her sights, all because a man dumped her and a boss replaced her. The show does not flinch from any of it. There is no last-minute joke where Diane reveals she was kidding. There is no cutaway that undercuts the weight of what she did. The writers let her be a real killer, and then they let her fall, and then they let her stay fallen. Her gravestone is shown in a later episode. The year of her death is printed on it, 1970 to 2010. She is the first main-tier recurring character the show ever permanently took off the board and left permanent. Everything about the choice signals that the show is serious, and the reason it lands as karma rather than as shock value is the shape of what she chose. Diane did not get a raw deal from the universe. She got a rough turn from 2 men she trusted, which is something thousands of people go through every day without murdering 5 strangers at a dinner party. The show draws a very clear line between being wronged and becoming a monster. Getting dumped is not a license. Getting replaced at work is not a license. The moment Diane decided to convert her pain into a body count, she stopped being someone who had been treated badly and became someone who was doing something worse than anything that had been done to her. The sniper bullet is the universe closing that ledger. There is also something worth noticing about the way Stewie delivers the killing shot. The show could have had Lois wrestle the gun away. The show could have had Joe burst through the door in the nick of time. The show could have had Peter trip into the scene and accidentally save his wife. Any of those versions would have let the character die, but kept the ending light. Instead, the show picks the coldest option on the menu. A little boy with a sniper rifle, 2 floors up, takes the shot with 0 hesitation and 0 emotion. The whole thing has the weight of an execution. That tonal choice is what makes the death feel like a judgment rather than a joke. Stewie is not the moral universe of the show. He is a baby with a scope. But in that single scene, the show uses him like a verdict. The writers later confirm something small that matters a lot to the karma of the whole situation. James Woods, who Diane killed first, ended up getting brought back to life. The show explained in a later episode that paramedics rushed him to a secret laboratory for celebrities and revived him because he was a celebrity and the world was not done with him yet. So James Woods, the man whose dumping started Diane's spiral, got a second chance at being alive. Diane did not. She stayed in the ocean. The difference says everything. The man she killed for revenge got to keep existing. She did not. Her entire plan failed not just in the moment, but across time. The person she was trying to punish got off easy. She paid the full price. The role Diane plays in the larger show is also worth holding up to the light. For 8 seasons, she had been a quiet presence. She showed up whenever the plot needed a news report to explain something. She read the words in front of her. Tom Tucker made jokes at her expense, and she mostly smiled through it on camera. The tension between those two was always there if you were looking for it. The show had given hints that her first husband had died by suicide, that her life outside the news desk was fragile, that Tom was increasingly making her the butt of his on-air humor. Little breadcrumbs scattered across years of episodes, and the feature-length mystery picked up those breadcrumbs and made them the motive. What that means, if you pull back and look at it, is that Diane's villain turn was not a random plot swing. The show had been quietly seeding her unhappiness for a long time. When she finally snapped, she did not come out of nowhere. She came out of 8 years of being overlooked, talked over, and pushed down the ladder of her own workplace, in front of a whole town watching. The karma works in 2 directions. Diane earned her death by choosing to solve her problem with 5 murders, and the men who treated her like she was replaceable also took a hit. James Woods spent weeks thinking he was going to die. Tom Tucker spent the whole episode being accused of being a killer, and the cozy little news desk Diane used to sit at was permanently changed. A new co-anchor named Joyce Kinney replaced her in the next season, and Tom had to live with the fact that his coldness helped create the person who tried to frame him for murder. The other detail worth saying plainly is that the show took this episode seriously as a craft piece. It was nominated at the Emmys for music composition. The writers built a real mystery with real clues. The director shot it like a movie, not like a sitcom. The guest cast included Patrick Stewart Stewart, Drew Barrymore, and Ashley Tisdale. For 1 hour of television, Family Guy stopped being Family Guy and became a locked-room murder mystery with actual stakes and an actual ending. That choice, to treat Diane's story as something that deserved real craft, is part of why her death feels earned rather than thrown away. The show put its chips on the table for her. It built a real story around her, and then it let her fall and kept her down. When people argue that Family Guy is a show where nobody ever really pays for anything, Diane Simmons is the first piece of evidence you hand them. The show took a background character, gave her a full episode of her own, let her be as evil as the show has ever let anyone be, and then closed the book on her forever. She killed 5 people. She fell off a cliff. She never came back. A sniper bullet from an upstairs window ended a woman who thought she had gotten away with it. The camera held on her empty spot on the cliff edge for a second longer than it needed to, and then it moved on, and the show moved on, and she was gone. Her being gone is the point. The show spent a decade building a person who could snap, and then it let her snap, and then it refused to pretend it had never happened. In a show famous for resetting everything back to zero by the end of the half hour, that refusal is what turns an ending into a verdict. The woman at the news desk got what she deserved, and the show had the discipline to leave her there. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But if Diane represents the show punishing someone who chose to become a monster, the next character on this list represents something different and maybe even more interesting. A creature the show built as a joke, kept alive as a running gag for a quarter of a century, and then let one of its own family members end for good in the most graphic possible way on a Sunday night in 2025. Section 2. Ernie the Giant Chicken. 25 Years of Violence. Ended by Meg. An expired coupon was handed over in the year 2000. That is where the whole thing started. Season 2, an episode called Da Boom, a flashback scene, a parking lot, and a giant yellow chicken in a bow tie walking up to Peter Griffin and offering him a little piece of paper. Peter took it, tried to use it, found out it had expired, and turned around and punched the chicken in the face. The chicken punched back. They broke through walls. They smashed through stores. They ended up on top of a building, fell off. Peter landed on the chicken, walked away thinking he had killed him, and the chicken opened one eye in the last frame of the fight. The joke was set. A giant, man-sized chicken named Ernie and a fat dad in a white shirt were going to spend the rest of the show beating each other half to death over something neither of them could quite remember, and neither of them would ever actually win. For 25 years, that was one of the most reliable jokes in the entire Family Guy playbook. You could almost set a watch to it. Every few seasons, the chicken would appear out of nowhere, Peter would see him, they would lock eyes, and the rest of the half hour would break into this absurd, sprawling, endless fistfight. They fought through train stations. They fought on cruise ships. They fought in airports, where an airplane propeller chopped the chicken up and he still survived. They fought down in sewers, where a crocodile tried to eat them, and they beat the crocodile to death with its own tail, and then kept fighting. They fought on a Ferris wheel. They fought through Japan, where scientific experiments turned Ernie into a full-size Godzilla, and Peter into some kind of super-powered warrior, and the two of them crashed back to Earth and kept going. Every single time, Peter would seem to win. Every single time, the chicken would open one eye after Peter walked away. Every single time, you knew he was coming back. The fights are part of the reason the show survived its own cancellation. Fox canceled Family Guy in 2002 because of low ratings, and it took a cult following passed around through pirated clips on early file sharing sites to bring it back 3 years later. A lot of the clips that were getting passed around were the chicken fights. They were visual, they were insane, they did not need any context. You did not have to have watched a single full episode to watch Peter and a chicken destroy an entire downtown block over nothing, and you would still laugh. The giant chicken fights were viral before the word viral was being used that way. They helped keep the show alive during the years when it wasn't even airing, so by the time the show reached season 23 in 2025, Ernie was not just a recurring joke. He was one of the oldest continuous jokes in the show's history. He had a wife named Nicole, he had a teenage son named Nugget, he had appeared in video games, he had been planned as the final boss of a theoretical Family Guy movie. The producers themselves had admitted in behind-the-scenes commentaries that they had planned to kill him off at least twice before, and had always walked it back because the character was too valuable and because they were holding him for that movie. Which is what makes what happened on season 23, episode 5, an episode called The Chicken or the Meg, which aired in early 2025, so surprising and so satisfying at the same time. The show killed him, for real. Head off the body running around like a chicken with its head head cut off. Because that is the joke. Because of course it is the joke. And the person who did it was not Peter, it was Meg. The plot of the episode is a wild one, but it is easy to follow. Meg goes on a reality dating show and ends up connecting with a teenage boy named Nugget, who turns out to be the teenage son of Ernie the Giant Chicken. This should be a disaster for 100 reasons, but it is not. Meg genuinely likes Nugget, and she starts spending time with his family. Nicole welcomes her. Ernie, surprisingly, welcomes her too. Meg suddenly finds herself fitting in better with this family of giant chickens than she ever has with her own. The joke of the episode is that Meg is closer to being part of the chicken family than she is to being part of the Griffin family, and the show, for once, is not wrong about that. Things go sideways when Ernie realizes who Meg's father is. Ernie, whose whole life has been shaped by his ongoing war with Peter, cannot handle the idea that his son is dating Peter's daughter, so he gives Meg an ultimatum: cut ties with Peter or stop dating Nugget. Pick one. That is the moment the episode turns, and that is the moment Meg sees Ernie clearly for the first time. Because what Ernie just did to her is exactly what Peter would do. The controlling demand, the either or, the refusal to let her have a life that isn't about him. Meg walks into Ernie's house thinking maybe she has finally found a family that is not going to treat her this way. And instead, she finds out that the giant chicken who has been beating up her father for 25 years is, under the feathers, basically a copy of her father. Same anger, same selfishness, same inability to let her be her own person. What happens next is the most graphic ending any recurring Family Guy character has ever gotten. Meg and Ernie are about to fight. Ernie says he cannot hit a girl, which is the one scrap of pride he still has left. Meg does not extend him the same mercy. The next shot is Meg walking out of the house, holding Ernie's head by the top. Behind her, the headless body of the giant chicken is running in circles around the lawn, literally doing the cartoon joke of a chicken with its head cut off. And this time, for the first time in 25 years of Ernie seeming to die and then opening one eye in the last frame, the camera does not go back to the body. There is no last second twitch. There is no flicker of an eyelid. He is dead. He stays dead. Months later, one of the show's top producers, a man named Alex Sulkin, went on the record with an entertainment website and confirmed that Ernie was not coming back. His exact point was that the character had gone the way of all flesh, which is a polite way of saying the chicken is in the ground. The reason he gave was practical and a little sad. The production team had spent a quarter of a century trying to top the last chicken fight with an even bigger chicken fight, and they had run out of places to go. The Japan fight had already turned Ernie into Godzilla. The crossover with The Simpsons had already turned the chicken fight into a full-on war between two animated shows. There was nothing left to escalate. The character had done every fight there was to do. Better to end him cleanly than to drag him through a worse version of himself for another decade. What makes this count as Ernie getting what he deserved, and not just a cold business decision, is the shape of how the show chose to let him go. Think about the kind of death the show could have given him. They could have had him get hit by a bus mid-punch. They could have had him fall into industrial machinery during a brewery fight. They could have given him a quiet death in a hospital bed from old age. They could have blown him up in a spaceship, or drowned him at sea, or run him through a propeller one final, definitive time. Any of those endings would have gotten him off the board. None of them would have meant anything. Instead, the show picked an ending that directly answered the entire question of who this character actually was. Ernie started the feud with Peter over an expired coupon. That is an almost comically small grievance. He spent the next 25 years destroying parts of Quahog, killing bystanders, wrecking his own life, and teaching his son to hate a family he did not really have a reason to hate. He built a marriage and a household around a grudge so small it could fit on a piece of paper, and he passed it on to Nugget without even thinking about it, because passing grudges down was the only kind of parenting he knew. When Meg showed up, Ernie had exactly one chance to break that pattern, a chance to let his son be happy, a chance to say, alright, this girl is not her father, and if my boy likes her, that is enough. He did not take it. He forced the same ultimatum on Nugget that Peter would have forced on Meg. He chose the grudge over the child. And the person who paid the price for that choice, the person who finally ended him, was the child his enemy had failed to protect for her entire life. Meg, the most neglected member of the Griffin family, killed the giant chicken because the giant chicken turned out to be just another version of the father who had neglected her. That is not just a death, that is a theme. There is something else worth noticing about the ending, which is that the show finally closed the door on the idea that Peter would ever be the one to do it. For 25 years, the deal was that these two men were locked together. Peter needed Ernie, and Ernie needed Peter. There is even a whole episode called Fecal Matters, where Ernie is dying of bird flu, and Peter has the chance to let him die, and the rest of the family convinces convinces Peter to save his life, because without the chicken to fight, a part of Peter would die too. They were tied together. They defined each other. The only satisfying ending for either of them should have been the two of them going out together, exhausted, in one last city-leveling punch-up. The show refused to give them that ending. Peter did not kill Ernie. Ernie did not kill Peter. Meg killed Ernie, and she did it off screen, and Peter was not even there. That is the cut that makes it karmic instead of just dramatic. Ernie did not get the glorious death against his oldest rival that he had been set up for across 25 years. He got a smaller, uglier death at the hands of a teenage girl in a reality TV dating episode, because in the end, the show decided he did not deserve the big one. He had spent a quarter century telling himself he was a warrior, locked in an epic war, and he went out because he was a bad dad who could not let his son be happy. The story he was telling about himself turned out to be wrong, and the ending matched the real story, not the one he thought he was living. The graphic nature of the death matters too. The show could have cut away. The show could have shown the aftermath and let it be a shrug. Instead, the last image the show gives the audience is the headless body running in circles on the lawn, the literal visual of the cartoon phrase, done completely straight. That image sits somewhere between funny and genuinely unsettling, and the discomfort is the point. A character who had, for 25 years, been the living embodiment of a joke got ended with a final, unavoidable version of that same joke. The chicken finally ran around like a chicken with its head cut off. There was no more joke after that. He was just gone. There is one more detail that sharpens the whole thing, which is that Meg herself did not seem bothered by what she had done. She walked out of the house carrying the head. That was the shot. No apology, no regret, no fourth wall line about how she hoped nobody minded. She killed the giant chicken and left with a souvenir, because after a lifetime of being ignored by the people around her, she had finally realized that asking permission did not get her anywhere, and that the only person who was going to pull her out of a bad situation was going to be herself. The death of Ernie the giant chicken is, in its own strange way, a coming-of-age moment for Meg Griffin, disguised as the ending of a completely different character's story. In Quahog, that is as close to closure as anyone ever gets. The oldest running joke in the show finally stopped running because the person the joke was hurting the most finally stood up and ended it. Ernie got what he deserved for a fight he should have let go of long before it reached his kitchen. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Ernie, for all his violence, was at least a grown man picking a fight with another grown man. The next character on this list went a step further, and a generation backward, and tried to erase his own brother from the history of the universe. Section 3. Bertram, the half-brother who tried to erase Stewie from the universe. Most rivalries in Family Guy start over something stupid. A coupon, a parking space, a chicken someone didn't want to share. The rivalry between Stewie Griffin and a baby named Bertram started over a jar in a fertility clinic, and it ended with one of them dead in Venice, Italy, in the year 1500 and something, with a crossbow bolt in his chest and another one in his head. That is a real sentence about a cartoon, and somehow it is also one of the most satisfying deaths the show has ever put on screen. To understand why, you have to back up and understand who Bertram is, because he is not a villain the show pulled out of a hat. The show planted him years before it killed him off. In a season 4 episode called Sibling Rivalry, Lois decides she wants another baby, and Peter panics and goes to get a vasectomy. A little accident happens at the clinic involving a cup, a mix-up, and a sample that does not get thrown away like it was supposed to. Peter's genetic material ends up in a vial that ends up being used to get another woman pregnant. That woman gives birth to a baby boy. The baby boy is named Bertram. Bertram, like Stewie, is a genius. Bertram, like Stewie, talks in full sentences and plots and schemes with the vocabulary of a grown man. Bertram, like Stewie, has a goal of world domination and the intelligence to chase it. The only real difference is that Stewie was raised in the Griffin house and Bertram was not. The two of them meet on a playground. They fight over who gets to be king of the playground. Stewie wins that first fight, but he does not kill Bertram. The show makes it look like he did, but actually he just planted a tree over where he buried him. and Bertram climbs out of the ground at the end of the episode and admits he ran away. That moment, that single buried tree, is the show planting a seed it will not pay off for 7 more years. Bertram shows up here and there across the seasons. He is there in Stewie Kills Lois, voicing his opinion from a television screen. He is there in background shots. He is there as a threat that has never really gone away. And then, in 2011, in a season 9 episode called The Big Bang Theory, the show finally lets him swing for real. The episode is about a lot of things. It is about Stewie trying to use his time machine to come up with a better comeback to an insult Brian threw at him at the dinner table. It is about Stewie and Brian getting bounced out of the space-time continuum, which is a fancy way of saying they get thrown into a place where time and space no longer work. It is about Stewie figuring out, in one of the most ridiculous and oddly clever jokes the show has ever done, that the explosion he used to get himself and Brian back into regular time was actually the Big Bang, the original event that created the universe. In this episode's version of things, Stewie created the universe. He is, quite literally, the reason everything exists, which is exactly why Bertram picks this moment to strike. He sneaks into the Griffin house, distracts Stewie with a toy lawnmower, steals the time machine's return pad, and disappears into the past. And as soon as he disappears, reality starts to unravel. Ripples begin to tear through the world like tears in a piece of paper. Stewie and Brian run for cover inside the time machine, and Stewie figures out what is happening. Bertram has gone back in time to kill one of Stewie's ancestors. If Stewie was never born, Stewie never creates the universe with that explosion. And if the universe was never created, nothing and nobody has ever existed, and all of reality wipes itself out from one end of time to the other. That is a staggering threat. Most Family Guy villains want to kill someone or take over a company or humiliate a rival. Bertram wants to erase the universe. The sheer scale of what he is willing to do is the reason his death, when it comes, feels like a real ending instead of a throwaway gag. Stewie and Brian chase him into the past. They land in Venice, Italy, around the year 1500, somewhere in the early days of the Italian Renaissance. The show is not wasting time here. Bertram has gone far, far back, hundreds of years, to hit Stewie at the root of his family tree. And the ancestor Bertram is hunting turns out to be one of the most famous people who has ever lived, Leonardo da Vinci. That is the reveal. Stewie is descended from Leonardo da Vinci. The show uses this for a quick joke. Stewie realizes he must be Italian and makes a couple of small comments about suddenly understanding his own love of certain foods. But the plot point underneath the joke is doing real work. It tells you how serious Bertram is. He did not go back a generation or two to pick off a great-grandparent. He went back 500 years, all the way to the Renaissance, to snip the whole family line off at the bud. He worked out that Leonardo was on Lois's side of the family, which meant killing him would not also erase Bertram himself, since Bertram and Stewie share Peter as a father, but have different mothers. Every piece of his plan has been thought through. This is not a hothead lashing out. This is a cold, careful plan to erase a sibling from existence and take an entire universe with him in the process. The battle itself is one of the biggest action scenes Family Guy has ever done. Bertram arrives in Venice and throws a knife at Leonardo. Stewie dives in front of it with a wooden paint palette and blocks the blow. Bertram grabs one of Leonardo's early flying inventions, a wooden glider with canvas wings, and takes off into the sky. Stewie grabs another of Leonardo's flying machines and chases him. The two babies fight in the air over Venice, throwing punches and firing weapons at each other from Renaissance-era contraptions held together with rope and wood. Stewie launches a magnetic missile at Bertram. Bertram jumps out of his glider and parachutes safely to the ground. Stewie blows up the glider in mid-air anyway, just to close off the escape route. They both crash back down to Earth. That is when Bertram does something that makes the story land. He grabs a crossbow. He points it at Stewie, at Brian, and at Leonardo da Vinci. Stewie, gasping, tries to reason with him. He tells Bertram that he created the universe. He tells Bertram that if Leonardo dies, Stewie is never born. And if Stewie is never born, the Big Bang never happens. And if the Big Bang never happens, everything that has ever existed is wiped out. Not just the two of them. Not just the Griffin family. Every star, every planet, every person, every blade of grass that has ever lived. All of it gone forever because of this one decision. Bertram does not care. The show makes him stare Stewie in the eyes and make the choice out loud. To him, erasing Stewie is worth destroying the universe. He would rather have nothing exist than have Stewie exist. And then he fires the crossbow into Leonardo da Vinci's chest and kills him. This is the line Bertram should not have crossed. And this is the line the show uses to earn what comes next. Stewie, in a rage, tackles Bertram. The fight on the ground is fast and ugly. Bertram gets the upper hand. He knocks Stewie down. He gets ready to finish it. And then Stewie grabs the crossbow, the same one Bertram just used on Leonardo, and puts a bolt through Bertram's chest. Then, to make absolutely certain, he puts a second bolt through Bertram's head. Bertram, for the first time in the whole show, does not talk after being hurt. He does not make a last quip. He does not announce a clever plan. He is just dead, on the ground, in Renaissance Italy, killed with the exact weapon he had just used to try to unmake everything. The show stays still for a second, and then the joke of it kicks in. Brian looks at the fact that the universe has not ended, despite Leonardo being dead. Stewie realizes that there must still be a way for his family line to continue. He figures out that he will have to become his own ancestor. He takes a small bit of his own genetic material, injects it into Leonardo's girlfriend, and then has himself cryogenically frozen, which is a fancy way of saying he freezes himself in ice, under the Griffin house to wait out the 500 years until the main timeline picks back up. Brian goes home in the time machine, gets a letter from the Vatican telling him where to dig, and thaws Stewie out. It is a ridiculous ending, and the show makes it ridiculous on purpose, but underneath the absurd comedy is a completely serious piece of storytelling. Bertram tried to destroy the universe. Bertram killed a genius who had not done anything to anybody, and Bertram died by the exact weapon he had picked up to do the killing. The show gave him the weapon. The show let him use it, and the show then made that same weapon the thing that ended him. There is nothing more classical than that. It is the kind of ending that goes back to the oldest stories people ever told. The idea that the tool a villain chooses to hurt someone with is going to be the tool that kills him in the end. What makes it land as karma instead of just payback is the fact that Bertram had been given every chance to be something better. He and Stewie share the same genius-level mind. They share a father. They share most of the qualities that could have, under different circumstances, made them best friends or partners instead of rivals. In their first meeting on the playground, Stewie actually spared him. He planted that tree over a grave that was not really a grave, and he let Bertram walk away. Bertram had a full life between that episode and the Big Bang Theory. He had time to choose something other than revenge. He did not. He came back, years later, with a plan that would have erased not just Stewie, but every person who had ever been born. All to settle a playground score. The size of the response gives you the shape of the person. A man willing to unmake the universe over a grudge is a man who has no brakes at all. And a man with no brakes should not be surprised when his own weapon swings back around and hits him. Bertram's death is also unusual in the landscape of Family Guy because it has stayed permanent. Most characters in the show die and come back. Stewie has died many times and always shows back up. Peter has died and come back. Brian famously died in season 12 and was back 2 episodes later. Bertram has never come back. The show gave him a couple of short appearances in other time travel episodes where he is technically still alive in the past, but the Bertram of the main timeline, the one who tried to end the universe, is gone for good. Like Diane Simmons, he joined the small club of recurring villains the show decided to end permanently. And like Diane, the show made sure his ending was not a joke, but a real, weighted moment of story. There is one final detail that sharpens the whole thing. The universe did not end when Leonardo da Vinci died. The universe ended up being fine because Stewie found a way to stand in for his own ancestor and keep the timeline going. Which means, in the final math of the episode, Bertram did not even accomplish his goal. He killed a legend. He traveled hundreds of years through time to do it. He lost his own life for it. And in the end, the thing he was trying to undo did not undo. The universe carried on. Stewie carried on. Bertram's entire plan turned out to be pointless, and the only thing he actually managed to permanently remove from history was himself. That is a special kind of failure. That is the kind of failure that can only happen to a person who wanted too much and thought too small at the same time. Bertram wanted to delete a brother. The universe deleted him instead. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Bertram, for all his evil, was at least a baby with a plan. He had a goal, even if it was a monstrous one, and he pursued it with intelligence. The next men on this list had no plan at all. Just a grown adult in a wife-beater shirt, a baseball bat, and a woman he had been hitting for longer than anyone should have allowed. Section 4. Jeffrey Fiegelman, the abuser crushed into a tree. Family Guy has a rhythm. When the show introduces a bully or a jerk or a creep, there is usually a joke attached. The music stays light, the lines have punchlines, the violence, even when it gets ugly, moves at the speed of a cartoon and gets reset by the time the next episode starts. You know when you are being asked to laugh because the show tells you. Jeffrey Fiegelman does not get any of that. He shows up in 2 episodes. In the first one, he is in the background. In the second one, he is the main story. And in both, the show makes a very specific choice. It strips out the comedy around him. The cutaways stop. The jokes go away. The music gets heavier. When Jeff is on screen, Family Guy stops acting like Family Guy. The normal rules of the show do not apply to him. He is played completely straight, and he is played as a monster. He is the closest thing the show has ever produced to a real-world villain, and the show knows it. And when he finally dies, he does not die funny. He dies crushed into a tree under the front end of Peter Griffin's car, with Quagmire behind the wheel, and years of rage coming out all at once. The first time Jeff appears on the show is in a Season 8 episode called Jerome is the New Black. He is standing outside Quagmire's house, holding a baseball bat, shouting for Quagmire's sister Brenda to come out. The joke the show sets up is that Quagmire is trying to keep Jeff from figuring out that Brenda is hiding inside. Jeff sees through it almost immediately, and what he does in response is not something you are supposed to laugh at. He walks past Quagmire, finds Brenda, and beats her with the bat. The show does not make it cartoonish, it does not rush past it, it lets you sit with the moment long enough to understand what you just watched. Jeff is her boyfriend. He hits her with a baseball bat. That is the introduction. That is all the show needs. You know everything about this man within the first minute of meeting him. He comes back 2 seasons later in a Season 10 episode called Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q, which is one of the most argued about episodes in the entire history of the show. A lot of longtime viewers do not like it. Some critics picked it out at the time as one of the worst episodes Family Guy had ever produced. The reason is not that the episode is badly made. The reason is that it is not really a comedy. It tells a serious, grim story about domestic abuse, and it expects the audience to sit through it with almost no jokes to soften the edges. People who tuned in expecting a normal half hour of Peter and the guys got a slow, heavy episode about a man hurting a woman he was supposed to love. That choice, whether you like it or not, is what makes Jeff's death land so hard. The show already broke its own rules to tell the story straight, so when the ending finally comes, it does not feel like a gag. It feels like something that had to happen. Here is what happens across the episode. Quagmire is in the hospital at the start, recovering from what is called an accident. Brenda shows up to visit him, and Jeff is with her. Jeff does not know how to behave in a hospital. He does not know how to behave anywhere. He insults Brenda in front of her brother and the people visiting. He tells her to shut up. He treats her like a piece of furniture. Quagmire, flat on his back, has to listen to it. Once Quagmire is back home, the full picture comes into focus. Jeff has been beating Brenda for a long time. The show does not hide this or hint at it. It shows it. The hits are not softened by music or punchlines. He hits her when she parks in the wrong spot. He hits her when she does not laugh at something he thinks is funny. He hits her when he does not like the joke on the television show they are watching. He hits her because he is used to it and because nothing has ever stopped him. He has not slowed down even after he finds out she is pregnant, which means any blow he lands on her is also landing on a baby that has not been born yet. The show does not let the audience forget that detail. This is the part that separates Jeff from every other Family Guy villain up to this point. Connie Tomiko is cruel, but she is still a teenage girl written for jokes. James Woods is evil, but he is playing a campy version of a real person, and the show never lets you forget it is all a send-up. Even Bertram, who wanted to unmake the universe, was doing it in the context of a time travel episode about a paint palette and a flying machine. Jeff is none of those things. Jeff is a grown man in a stained white undershirt who hits his pregnant girlfriend, and the show refuses to make him anything else. There is no cutaway to soften him. There is no running gag to absorb him. He is just a bad man, drawn flat. Quagmire decides he has to stop it, and the plan he comes up with, together with Peter and Joe, is not a clever cartoon plan. It is a desperate one. They are going to lure Jeff out into the woods, alone, and kill him. The plan is to stage something that will get him out of the house, away from Brenda, into a place where no one will find the body. They do not dress it up as anything else. The three of them know they are planning to kill a man. Quagmire is the one one driving it because Quagmire is the only one in the group who has watched this happen to his sister for years and cannot take another night of it. The plan falls apart almost immediately. Jeff is not dumb. He sees what is coming. He has probably thought about the possibility that Brenda's brother might one day come for him. So when he and the three men get out into the woods, he moves first. He swings the butt of a shotgun into Peter. He swings it into Joe. He knocks both of them unconscious in a matter of seconds and leaves them on the cold ground to freeze to death. Then he drags Quagmire deeper into the trees because Quagmire is the real threat, and Quagmire is the one he wants to deal with personally. In the woods, Jeff beats him. He beats him the way he has been beating Brenda. He does it calmly because he has done this 100 times before. And then he puts his hands around Quagmire's throat and starts to choke him. Here is where the episode delivers its one moment of actual character writing, the line that has stuck with fans for more than a decade. Jeff, choking the life out of Quagmire, sneers at him and says something along the lines of, "Nobody has ever choked him like this." And Quagmire, dying, says a single sentence back. He tells Jeff that he chokes himself every day. It is a Quagmire joke, a reference to the running gag about his private habits. But the way the episode plays it, it is not a joke. It is the last breath of a man who has spent his whole life being a walking punchline, suddenly finding inside himself something he did not know was there, something steadier than a joke, something that matches the situation. And then he gets to the car. Peter, somewhere in the background, has woken up. Peter's car is sitting nearby, keys still in it. Quagmire breaks loose from Jeff long enough to get behind the wheel. Jeff tries to run. Quagmire puts the car into gear and chases him through the woods. Jeff stumbles. Jeff runs. Jeff weaves through the trees. And Quagmire runs him down with the front of the car and pins him between the bumper and the trunk of a tree and keeps the pedal pressed and crushes him until Jeff is not moving anymore. Peter, who is caught up by now, watches it happen and says a small, confused line about how this is Brenda's brother, not really understanding what is going on. Jeff, in his last second, apparently manages the words, "What the hell? I killed you." Those are the last words he says. They are not clever. They are not funny. They are just a man in shock that someone finally hit back. And then he is dead, crushed into the tree. Quagmire sits in the driver's seat, breathing heavy. Peter stares. The show does not play a joke off the death. There is no cutaway to break the tension. There is no last-second eye-opening, the way Ernie the Giant Chicken used to do. There is no joke about the body. Jeff Fiekelman is gone. The man who hit Brenda with baseball bats and fists, the man who did not stop when she got pregnant, the man who dropped two of Quagmire's friends in a heartbeat and came within a breath of killing Quagmire too, has been killed by the front of a Toyota and a tree. There is a reason this death ranks so high on any serious list of characters in this show getting what they deserved. Almost nobody in Family Guy dies with this much weight. Diane Simmons gets a sniper bullet. Bertram gets a crossbow bolt. Ernie the Giant Chicken, after 25 years, gets his head torn off in the middle of a comic bit. All three of those deaths, as big as they are, happen inside the normal cartoon register of the show. Jeff's death does not. Jeff's death happens in an episode where the show has turned off most of its usual instruments. No cutaway, no cheerful music, no fourth wall wink. The animation is the same as always, but the way the scene is paced, the way the lines are delivered, the way the silence sits in the air after the car stops, it all moves at a slower, heavier speed than a Family Guy episode is supposed to move. That choice is what makes it a real ending instead of a joke ending. The show decided, for Jeff, that the violence he did to Brenda was serious enough that it deserved a serious exit. No comedy as a cushion, no trap door, just a grown man hitting a tree at 30 miles an hour, because the only person who could finally stop him was the brother of the woman he had been hurting. It is also worth saying plainly that what happens to Jeff does not happen to most abusers in the real world. Most of them are never punished. Most of them are never stopped. Most of the time, if someone is being hurt at home, the person hurting them continues to get away with it for years or forever. Part of the reason this episode gets talked about so much, and part of the reason it gets argued about so hotly, is that it shows a version of the story where the abuser loses, where the people around the person being hurt do something about it, where the ending is not sad and quiet and resigned, but loud and ugly and final. You can like that or dislike that. You can think the show earned it or did not earn it, but there is no denying that for every person watching who has known someone in a Brenda situation, there is something in that final image, Jeff pinned between a car and a tree, not moving, that lands in a way no cutaway gag ever has. Jeff Fiekelman gave the audience nothing. He was not charming. He was not funny. He was not smart. He did not have a plan. He did not have a twist. He was a man who hit a woman who loved him and who kept hitting her, even when she was carrying his child. And who was so used to getting away with it that it never occurred to him that one day somebody was going to show up with a car and a grudge and finish him. The show gave him exactly the death that Shape of a Man earned. No less, no more. And then it moved on, and it barely ever spoke his name again. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Jeff was a grown man with his hands around another grown man's throat. He used size and anger and fear, and he earned the end he got. The next name on this list never once picked up a weapon. She was a teenage girl in a high school hallway, and her worst crime was words. But across the course of 15 seasons, almost every single member of the Griffin family took a turn, making her pay for them. Section 5. Connie D'Amico, the mean girl who never learns. Some characters in Family Guy get one big karmic moment and then disappear. One death, one humiliation, one final scene that closes the book on them for good, and the show moves on. Connie D'Amico is the opposite of that. Connie has been getting what she deserves, in small pieces and big pieces, for almost the entire run of the show. She has been the victim of Peter. She has been the victim of Stewie. She has been the victim of Brian. She has been the victim of Meg more than once. Every single main Griffin except Chris and Lois has at some point personally destroyed her in some way, and the show keeps bringing her back season after season so they can do it to her again. The running joke of Connie is that she never learns. She bullies Meg or she bullies somebody else, and the Griffin family punishes her for it. And a few episodes later, she is back at school tormenting Meg like nothing ever happened. The consequences never stick, but they keep happening, and the pile of them over 20 plus seasons is one of the most sustained karmic streaks the show has ever committed to. Connie first shows up in a first season episode called Let's Go to the Hop. She is the most popular girl at Adam West High School, head of the cheerleading squad, beautiful in the way cartoons draw beautiful high school girls, and openly mean to Meg from the very first scene. Her voice actor in that first appearance is Fairuza Balk, the actress famous for playing the scary witch in The Craft. From the second episode onward, Lisa Wilhoit takes over the role, and that is the Connie most people know. She has blonde hair, red lipstick, a crop top, a pair of pants that changes color every few seasons, and an attitude that stays exactly the same for 20 years. And the attitude is the thing. Connie is not subtle. Connie is not complicated. She is a high school mean girl, written big and drawn bigger. She picks on Meg because Meg is easy to pick on. She humiliates Meg in front of the whole school when she gets the chance. She makes fat jokes. She makes hygiene jokes. She leaves Meg out of things on purpose and then tells her about them afterward. She is the exact kind of person everybody has met at some point in their life, turned up a little louder and drawn a little meaner for television. The reason she becomes such a satisfying target is not just that she is cruel. It is that she is stupid in a very specific way. She keeps picking on Meg even after the Griffin family has shown her over and over again that picking on Meg has consequences. The whole town has been turned on her in half a dozen separate ways. She has been physically injured. She has been publicly humiliated. She has been arrested. She has been dragged out of her social standing in front of everyone she cares about. And still, a few episodes later, she will walk up to Meg in the hallway and call her ugly, and the whole cycle starts over. The first real beating she takes comes in a third season episode called Barely Legal. Meg has been humiliated at a school dance because of Connie, and Brian, drunk and furious, corners Connie at the punch bowl and delivers one of the most quoted speeches in the whole show. He tells her, to her face, that the only reason she is popular is because she developed early and started doing things with boys when she was way too young. He tells her that deep down, she cannot stand to look at herself in the mirror because she sees somebody she does not like. And then he tells her, very calmly, that by the time she turns 19, her looks will be gone, her body will be used up, and even her own stepfather will not want her anymore. He asks her if he is in the ballpark. She bursts into tears and runs out of the room. The scene is brutal. It is the kind of scene that, watched back today, makes some viewers uncomfortable because of how personal it gets. But inside the world of the show, it lands as karma, because everything Brian says is delivered as the other side of the exact mirror Connie has been holding up to Meg. Connie has spent 3 seasons telling Meg that nobody loves her, that she is ugly, that she is going to end up alone. Brian takes that same mirror and turns it around. It is the first time anybody in the show has pushed back on Connie with the same kind of cruelty she has been pushing onto Meg, and Connie cannot handle it. She runs, she cries, eyes. She is, for one moment, just a scared teenage girl who has finally heard the thing she has been afraid of her whole life. But she comes back, because Family Guy always brings her back, and that is the joke. The next big hit is in a season 7 episode called McStroke. Stewie, disguised as a teenager, tricks Connie into going out with him. She is interested because she thinks he is a cute new kid at her school. They end up in a car together, and at some point she finds out he is actually a baby. Her reaction is to tell him to get out of the car, which is a fair reaction. But Stewie, furious at being rejected, stands up in the middle of the school parking lot and shouts to the entire student body that Connie was involved in something highly inappropriate. The crowd hears it, the rumor catches fire. The last scene Connie is in has her being arrested by the police, taken away in handcuffs, with the implication that she is being charged with a very serious offense. It is, once again, exactly the kind of social destruction Connie has spent years trying to inflict on Meg, aimed back at her with perfect accuracy. Then comes a season 6 episode called Peter's Daughter. Connie walks up to Meg, makes a fat joke at her expense, and does not notice Peter is standing right there. Peter grabs her by the head and drives her face into a glass fire extinguisher cabinet on the wall. Not once, several times. The cabinet glass cracks. Blood appears. The show does not play the moment as a gentle slapstick beat. It plays it as a father losing his temper in a way that is genuinely a little scary to watch. The joke is Peter's line right before he does it. A quiet, almost polite request for her to take a look at the fire extinguisher behind her. He smashes her face into it before she has time to turn her head all the way around. It is one of the most quoted Peter moments in the whole show, and it exists entirely because Connie could not resist one last fat joke at Meg. In a season 7 episode called Dial Meg for Murder, Meg does the revenge herself. She has just gotten out of a short stay in juvenile detention, and she is not the same girl who left. She walks up to Connie and her friends in the school hallway, and, carrying a bag of unopened soda cans, swings the bag like a club and knocks them all out cold. While Connie is unconscious on the floor, Meg kneels down and kisses her on the mouth. It is one of the most unexpected images the show has ever put on screen. A quiet, still shot of Meg having a moment of total control over the girl who has tortured her for years. And then Meg gets up and walks off, and the show moves on. Connie, when she wakes up, has no idea what happened to her. Connie even gets punished for being a bad friend. In a season 7 episode called Steroids, Chris becomes briefly popular, and Connie tries to date him as a joke, and then actually starts to like him. When the joke gets exposed and Chris turns the tables on her, she is knocked unconscious by Chris and 2 other girls. Peter, disgracefully, lies on top of her at the party afterward. Connie loses her social standing that night and has to come crawling to Meg for help. Meg, to her credit, eventually helps her get it back. Connie, to her discredit, barely thanks her and is back to bullying Meg a few episodes later. The show makes the point very clearly. Connie cannot be saved by kindness. It slides off her. She is not a person who learns. And then comes the final, biggest piece of karma, years later, in a season 20 episode called Connie's Celica. Lois takes a short job as a music teacher at Adam West High School. Connie, who is now a student in her class, hates her. Their clash comes to a head when Connie, in the middle of a lesson, tells Lois that she is terrible and throws a tomato at her in front of the entire class. That is the moment Connie crosses the line the show has been waiting for her to cross for 2 decades. Lois sends her to the principal's office. The school counts it as her 3rd strike. Connie is expelled. Not suspended, expelled. The thing the show had threatened to do to her for 20 years finally happens. Adam West High, the school she ruled, kicks her out and locks the door. What makes that moment sting, even for a character the audience has cheered against for years, is the size of the drop. Connie's entire identity was built on being the most popular girl at that school. She had no life outside of it. Her friends, her status, her power over Meg, all of it only existed inside those hallways. The second the school expels her, she is nothing. A later episode shows her working at a strip club. Another shows her living alone in a cabin in the woods for 2 years. Her name stops meaning anything. The queen has been pushed out of the palace, and she has no idea how to live anywhere else. The reason Connie is such a strong example of a character getting what she deserves is not any one of these individual hits. It is the pattern. The show could have let her bully Meg for a season and then quietly dropped her. Instead, Family Guy decided, very deliberately, to keep her around forever and to use her as a target that every member of the family could take a swing at when the opportunity came up. Peter smashed her face into a fire extinguisher.
कोल्ड ड्रिंक बड़ी टेस्टी है यादन भाई। हाँ यार भाई काजल भी आ रही हो तुम आजकल। कोल्ड ड्रिंक है बाबा। यादन भाई वो माला हम रह गई। यादन भाई को नारी खिला ला यार। यादन भाई अगर तुमने मेरठ वाली नारी खा ली तब खुश हो गई तुम्हारी है भाई। समझा चलो सब चलो दिल्ली बम्बई चाय पिला लेने एक सिगरेट चाय पियो सिगरेट। यादन भाई बीड़ी तो पिलो सिगरेट पी के देखो कैसे दिन मजा ही अलग है। आज भैया यार दावत में भी ले आई उन्हें। पूरी सराय गाना होगी कुछ सराय गाने कहाँ होगी पूरी। यादन भाई भी होंगे। यादन भाई यहाँ हमारी बिरादर में आया तुम किसका खत्म काटो यादन भाई। जो माचिस बड़े नहीं है पास वो वाला माचिस वो लाइट नहीं है बाहर से माचिस मतलब नहीं तुम्हारे पास है कोल्ड ड्रिंक पी लो आज सुबह उठूंगा 7 बजे यादन भाई। मैं गया कार्टून डाल के आया फिर बाजार गया 3 घंटे में आया जांच कराने फिर मंददाव ले गया वहाँ पे गया 2.5 घंटे में आया वहाँ से। हाँ मलगान से लेना फिर सिविल लाइन गया काम से घूमने फिर यादन भाई को घुमा के लाया। यादन भाई घुमा के लाऊं तुम्हें बताओ। यादन भाई को मेरठ वाली नाली गया थे तभी खुद गई भाई जावे की नारी फेल है। कहाँ पे है जा तू बैठे है समसात पे अली माले पे है कहाँ पे वहाँ है शेरू है होटल है शेरू से पीछे पर जहाँ पे बिरयानी भी बिके सब कुछ बिके वहाँ पर है मेरठ वाली नारी बहुत टेस्टी है। याद भाई तभी खुद नो है नाम बदल देना मेरठ वाली नारी से आ गया। हाँ मैं ये ले आ कब ले आया था मैं कब ले आ रहा भाई खिला ला यार याद भाई नारी तबीयत खुश हो गई तुम्हारी तबीयत खुश। तुम्हें फोटो क्लिक करके लिया तुम्हारी फोटो तो तुम्हें नारी का फोटो और नहीं तो क्या साहिल कहाँ पे तुम्हें बुलाने कुत्ता क्या हुई क्या साहिल को ये बड़ा वाला है फिर यार मत ना यार हाथों में दर्द हो रहा तेरी उंगलियों में दर्द हो रहा है अब मत जाना। हाँ खाली याद भाई को यार परेशान करें चाल के और न देंगे पैसे ही दे मैं मार लेंगे और याद ना पहनाई ने याद नहीं पहनाई एक आधा पे टोपी ना तुम्हें टोपी पहनाई एक आधा पे ना कितने की बनाई होगी ईमानदारी से बस 1300 रुपये टोपी में क्या हो रहा है याद भाई 1300 रुपये हो रहा है सागर में यार 200 कुछ रुपये सागर लिया 1 किलो लिया सागर बोल रहे ने 30 रुपये पेटीएम किलो है। हाँ बता रहा था कि मैं बता रहा तो सागर ने देखा 1 हफ्ते बाद हाँ सागर ये 130 रुपये हो रहा 260 1 किलो हो रहा है फिर मेरा आवाज सीधा हो रहा मैं स्क्रीनशॉट सही है मेरा सरताज भाई ने करसान दिया थक गए हैं आज से भैया भी बहुत टाइम लगा अबे बहुत हाँ हाँ गिरा कोल्ड ड्रिंक आप नहीं ने हमें कोल्ड ड्रिंक लो पियो कोल्ड ड्रिंक पी के आओ तब तक भाई। सुराब भी करना, कोल्ड ड्रिंक भी पीना सुकून से अपने आराम से। हाय हाय शम्मी शम्मी हाय हाय। अब क्या हुआ बटुआ, मतलब हुआ हम नहीं ना हुआ लेना।
अब ये पशु में इनके बाप को लेने पड़ेंगे शिक्षा को।
क्या करें हम लेने उससे, हमें दे रहा ना ले रहे।
हम बता रहे हैं
सामान जो वहाँ के लावे यार।
तो बात वहाँ का नहीं करूँगी।
कर्जा वर्जा निकल रहा है। हाँ पॉइंट पे सब पहुँचे।
ऐसे तो हम भी लगाना है चक्कर।
हाँ ऐसे तो हम भी लावे हैं।
हम बोला रहे हैं कि वो हिंदू है।
ओ यार भाई ऐसे तो हम भी लगा मैं तुम्हें भाई ना, वैसे हमने भी तो लगाई है कहीं दफा बस। तो क्या
हमने मिलाया, हम बोला रहे हैं कि उसमें हिस्सा मिलेगा हमें मकान में से।
याद है भाई दे दो भैया मकान में हिस्सा।
कौन है ऐसे नहीं, हम जो लगाएंगे
याद है भाई, याद है भाई फैमिली वाली वीडियो में आई शादी कहते देखी याद है भाई वीडियो में तुम्हारी
आई फैमिली।
हाँ टेबल पे बैठी
भाई ने और बिल्लू भाई ने बहुत मेहनत करी है।
भाई याद है मैंने रिकॉर्ड तोड़ दिया है और लड़ाई होनी याद है भाई झेल ले। झगड़ा तैयार है याद है भाई उस दिन है भाई इधर सफर माना।
कौन
कौन
चूट लपाड़ी है खाने आ यहाँ पे।
कौन है कौन कह रहा
राजू है।
बच्चा
मैं भी कर लूँगा 25 लाख रुपए क्या एक कार
ना मैं ले रहा कोई दे दे पब्लिक पे पैसा है ना।
सुनो दो बाहर से करा था गाँव गैस से लैंड पड़ी गई पूरी कर लूँगा और ये बात तो कैश।
हाँ भाई याद है भाई क्या दे रहा है। हाँ वो तो हाँ पता है
उसकी शादी बहुत तगड़ी हुई है। खाली जैन के नाम पे हुई है। जैन के नाम पे तो हुई है उसकी शादी। तो मेरी करा दो कहीं पे भी। पाँच की लड़की। हाँ बहुत यही है। तो लंबे की हो रही है तो कराई तो यही नहीं है। यही तो कराया इसका।
आई यही कहा करवा भाई अब ना वो हमें आई है कि नाम तो होने बस इतना टाइम कहाँ है भाई यही वो टाइम कहाँ इतना।
अच्छा ही
नहीं इतना टाइम ना भैया ये। हाँ
इनसे पूछो बहन का लेंट होगा वो मुसलमान ना है तो कर लो गैर बात करना मिल जाएगी बहन की लेंट कभी सारी।
आने वाले टाइम में क्या बता में होना स्टार्ट हो जाएंगी वैसे।
कलाई में करेंगे लोंडिया ले आएंगे लोंडिया में देंगे
बदला सके हैं।
हालात हैं 5 लाख रुपए पेटी बेटा पूरी कंपनी का है आप।
अच्छा बढ़िया है अच्छी बात है। हाँ भैया किस है
हम बादशाह नए लाले प्रेसिडेंट कौन
बिलाल
है?
बिलाल सिराज सिराज ही कहते हैं बॉस।
बड़ा बड़ा नाम है वो।
फुल पागल है फुल पाखंडी।
मैंने कल